Hello, all. Welcome to our UN Days celebration through the week, where we are having a speaker series where we are inviting leaders from different sustainability organizations to speak to us. And today we have with us Dr. Vinayaka Rao, who's a PhD doctorate from National University of Singapore, and is also co-founder and CTO of Gaia Foods, which is into alternate protein. Vinayaka, welcome to Impact Consulting Bangalore's UN Celebration Week.
Thanks, Arjun. Thanks for inviting me here.
It's a pleasure to have you here, and also I would ask you to give an introduction about yourself to our audience.
Absolutely, we'll do that. Thanks a lot.
Mhm.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vinayaka. I'm the founder and the CTO of Gaia Foods. We are a Singapore-based cultured red meat company where we are trying to focus on producing meat such as beef steaks and pork chops for Asian consumers primarily. And then we will try to move on from there to other parts of the world. And my interest started in this field when I started visiting some wet markets in Asia. If you have visited, you'll feel the disgust of visiting wet market, mainly because of all the blood and smell, every other thing. And this kind of prompted me, is this a better way for us to produce any meat? And that's the reason for me to take up the challenge of how do we transition from killing the animal for meat to producing it in a more sustainable and an animal friendly manner.
Mhm. And you mentioned like everyone when they see the fish markets, they'll have similar feeling, but not everyone gets this idea to form a company. I think a major part of it is due to your educational background. Could you tell us a bit of that as well as your journey through your research career towards Gaia Foods?
Yeah. I started my studies, all my early education was done in Bangalore in India.
Hmm.
And then I moved on to Singapore to do my PhD, as Arjun mentioned, in National University of Singapore, where I was primarily focused on understanding muscle cell works. What makes a muscle cell muscle and how they are functioning within the body.
Hmm.
And after that, after my PhD, I went on to do postdoctoral fellow in Duke and US Medical School. And there I was focused on understanding how do muscle form. We were using different stem cells and using them to push to form different cells. And one of the cells that we were interested in was muscle. So that's kind of the background I had already. And then when this coincided with my visit to the wet market,
Hmm.
I really thought that my education can really help in solving some of the problems which will be absolutely necessary for making transition to a cleaner meat world.
Hmm. And these days, you have been hearing of alternate protein, and there are different forms of alternate protein. So, which one is Gaia Foods doing, and what kind of product portfolio do you have?
So alternate protein is a new field wherein we are trying to mimic or take any available natural food and make it more energy dense, customer and consumer friendly, and produce in a more 21st century manner. So
Hmm.
that's the whole idea of alternate protein. And this is kind of upscaling of any of the existing methods of food or any waste material in nature and making it to more easily absorbable and consumable food manner. And specifically, we are focusing on one of the pillars of alternate protein known as cultured meat or cultivated meat.
Hmm.
Here, instead of making meat from plant-based or any other source, what we are trying to do is we are trying to produce meat using animal stem cells. These are real meat. When we consider how what is meat means, they are from the animal itself. And instead of growing animal in a farm or field and killing them, what we are trying to do is we are taking stem cell from them and giving them the best possible condition for them to grow and survive. We give the best food for them, best nutrients and best environment for them, and tell them to do their job. We don't have to push, do anything. They will do their job. Once they are given proper food and all, they will continue to grow. And once they're mature enough, we'll take them out and harvest for producing any kind of meat that we are all used to.
Hmm. Hmm. And that way, like there are multiple factors here. Like one is uh, killing of animal is completely avoided, right? And then there's also this factor where um, you're not consuming the resources. There is no carbon emission. There's no extra water requirement, and all such things are there. So you touch upon multiple SDG goals. You cut across multiple SDG goals. So what are some of the in a non-technical manner, what is it that you are doing that is affecting the planet in a positive way?
Okay. So before I jump onto the specific goals, let me give a brief about how meat is produced currently.
Mhm.
If you go and check, we all know the issues about deforestation in Amazon forest, and we are cutting down forests at a much faster rate. Amazon is considered lung of the earth, and almost 99% of the forest deforestation happening either for growing food for the animal feed or or rearing farms. So for growing animals itself, these are the two major uses of deforestation. And we are doing this just for the meat production purposes.
Mhm.
That's like a mind-boggling number. And like we majority of the deforestation happening around the world is meant for these purposes only, either for producing food for the animal feed or animal rearing itself. And on top of that, if you look at the land area, we have a good number of data for US and pretty similar for many other countries. Almost 30% of the arable land that we are using is meant for animal farming or food for animal farming. One of the major food is soybean that we are using in animal farming.
Mhm.
That is used like 30% of the arable land. I'm not talking about total land. I'm talking about just arable land that is used for crop production or food production. On top of that, 30% of the freshwater resource that we have is diverted for just animal farming itself. And combining all of these factors together, we are in a perfect situation wherein we have hyper optimized meat production and hyper optimize the cost. So meat has become such a cheap commodity mainly because of unregulated, unchecked growth of these farms.
Mhm.
You can't go into any farms without prior approval and all the consent. So this is a situation, and these are the problems. And combining all of these things has led to a situation where meat production or crop for the meat production combined is responsible for almost like 15 to 18% of the global greenhouse gas emission.
Mhm.
So it may sound small, but if you put in perspective, this is second most pollution compared to the energy sector. That is like all our energy requirements, burning oil, fossil fuels and all.
Mhm.
Just after that is meat production. But this will not be seen anywhere, mainly because no, like as a meat eaters, we don't go and see where animals are killed, where animals are reared. We don't really care. We just want to go to supermarket and get our meat. So that's the kind of problem we have with the current way of producing meat.
Mhm.
And with that, first challenge we are trying to address is, can we be more greener and more cleaner compared to the current way of producing meat? And in our system, the major greenhouse gas emission happens because of the energy that we use, that is and the greenhouse that produces because of energy production.
Mhm.
So if we go into alternate energy production, our greenhouse gas emission comes significantly lower. It's predicted in somewhere in the range of 90 to 95% reduction in the greenhouse gas emission by using cultivated meat technology. So that's the first challenge we are trying to address. And second thing is, we are a population of 7.5 to 7.8 billion people, and approximately 7 billion people eat meat. And we kill 70 billion animals every year to feed this population.
Mhm.
And this is excluding fish and seafood I'm talking about. This is just land animals, chicken, beef, pork, all these kind of things. So that's another staggering number we have reached. We killing like way more animal than how many humans they are. So the next challenge we are trying to address is like life on land. How do we sustain life on land? We don't want to be doing monoculture of animals like beef or pork or only thing. We want to spread out, give chances for all other animals to survive and sustain in the land.
Mhm.
So by going into cultivated meat, we hope that we can reduce farm animal, like factory style farming of animals, and give more chance for animals to roam around in natural habitat. So that's the second most important challenge we are trying to address. And the third one is how do we transition from a hyper-optimized meat industry to a more smart industry innovation and infrastructure based economy for meat production. So our technology, it doesn't matter where. If we can put the plant right in the middle of the city and then produce meat for the population. We don't need to have a dedicated farm or dedicated. We don't have to deforest forests to produce meat. So these are the three main focus area we are trying to address in the UN goals.
SDGs, right? Okay. And how has the response been in public? Like when you tell them this is not really meat, but this is meat, of course, you're also going to them mentioning about the taste, texture, and other such factors which show that it is like actual meat. At the same time, you're also mentioning them the benefits of having this meat against the regular option. So
Yeah.
even after telling so many positives, there might be some challenges. So what challenges are you facing in entering the market today?
Yeah. So currently in the world, there's only one company which has got approval to sell their products. That is in Singapore. And there are many companies we are going to apply for regulatory approvals. But there are much bigger challenges than just the product. So first is, how do we develop the technology in a cost-effective manner? Because currently our meat costs several $1,000s per kilo to produce, which is not sustainable to go to market. So how do we bring down the cost? This is where our expertise in different technological aspects comes into the picture. And we are focusing on aggressively pushing for technological development. Because once we have the technology, then the second challenge we have to face is, how do we convince consumers? Consumers always are like going to be wary about new technology. When we talk about producing meat, they have different opinions in their mind, even though they have not tasted the product or they don't even know the technology, but they have preconceived idea about what is the technology. They call it's a lab grown, they call it as a Frankenstein meat, various names are there. So overcoming this kind of perception is a big challenge for us. And one way we are approaching this is by extensive education. We are going and educating people and bringing people to our labs to show how exactly things are done. So one of the surprising observation we have made, once people come to our lab and see how things are made, they'll be like, oh, so why was there such a bad name associated with it? What are you doing something which makes it so bad? So they completely change the perception about what we're trying to do. So that kind of small scale experiment for us kind of led to okay, then it's absolutely important for us to go and educate people about the technology. And there's always going to be some small number of skeptics about this food, which will never be able to convert. It is like, how do I convince people that cars are much better than horses? There are some people who still go on horses. We can't change them, and they are not our target. But 99% of the population has transitioned to using cars or automobiles. So that's our aim. We'll never be able to convince 100% of the population, but we want to convince significant population so that we can make real impacts, not just like, oh, we want to sell some product to some rich people or anything. We want to make a significant impact. For that, we have to have education parallelly going along with the technology development.
Correct. Awareness is very much important. And you mentioned
Absolutely.
about positive impact, and where even you don't need 100% of the population, but you need good numbers in order to make an impact. So just if you had a goal, if you had a number or a metric in mind, which through which you have to make an impact, what are those key metrics?
So one of the main challenges for us is high capex cost for developing infrastructure. So this kind of heavy upfront cost makes us slow to go to the market. So what we are planning is, we want to prove the technology, grow a little bit slowly, and optimize our protocol and technology in such a way that by the mid of the decade or the end of the decade, we want to achieve at least 10 to 15% transition from regular meat to clean meat technology. So plant-based meat is helping to move the things forward, but we strongly believe cultivated meat will be much more significant in changing people's mind. Like even though plant-based meats can have a real feel or same kind of a meat option for people, but the idea about plant-based makes many people like don't want to change. They try the product for novelty purposes or new concept. But in order for us to make a real change, and like if you go to supermarket, we want you to like look at two different kind of meat. One is meat produced by killing animal, and one produced in a more sustainable manner. We want a fair playing ground for us to develop a technology and showcase the technology. So the idea is by the end of this decade, we want to achieve at least 10 to 15% of meat, and we are talking about few million tons of this meat I'm talking about. So that's going to be a huge challenge for us, and that's what we are aiming for.
Right. In fact, the release of this video coincides with the COP26 launch, which is October 31st. So it's happening in Glasgow this time. And wanted to ask you, like, from the regulatory point of view, from the climate action point of view, from organizations getting together, what changes have you been seeing for alternate protein, and what kind of organizations and regulations are coming up to aid you?
So this field of cultivated meat is very new. As I mentioned, there's only one country which has approved one product, but that's a very big milestone what we managed to achieve, because the whole industry started just 7 years ago, and within 7 to 8 years we managed to get one product approval. So this is one from the optics point of view, it's absolutely important. And also suddenly this gave a new way of challenges for many governments. So we are kind of forming groups amongst our companies who are in different geographical location to help different governments, because even the technology is so new for governments also, because they also don't have a clear regulatory framework. So we are helping them to also make the framework for other countries as well. So that's one of the challenges we are facing, and also helping governments to frame the regulatory framework. And the second thing is the investment. One of the good thing is there are really some smart investors who are seeing the potential of this technology, and we need a huge amount of investment. So there is investment coming into this space, but still nowhere sufficient for us to transition to the numbers I mentioned about 10 to 15% by the turn of the decade. So we are educating investors also, because investors also like they are not completely aware of what is the technology and what is the potential of this. So these two things we are mainly focusing on. How do we challenge in order for this field to get up to the world stage? Then, as I mentioned, education, awareness and education. This requires a much broader plan. It's not like one company, one government. It's a much global scale plan. We need that kind of a plan to approach different sectors and different customers.
Right. And if you had a genie lamp and you were restricted to ask only in this topic, so what would your 3 wishes be?
No, I think one of the first wish I definitely would like is educate as many people as possible about the technology, and let them know. And if there is chance, visit your nearby labs where they're producing meat. And like, you don't have any disgust or bad feel about drinking a beer, because even though it's done in factory, and our technology is going to be very similar to that one. So we want first and foremost is education. And once they're educated, the people see the potential of the technology and the impact it's going to make. We want people to slowly transition into looking into products produced in a more sustainable manner. And for that, we definitely need government's help, because this comes from a much bigger organizations. It can't be done by one companies and all. But we have to help governments how to approach transitioning the population from eating regular meat to a more sustainable meat. And third is investment dollars. I think all entrepreneurs always want investment dollars.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And let's say you're selling this product from Gaia Foods. It could be any any form of meat per se. So how would you go about, like, how would you sell this? What are the key things that you would say? One, appealing to their hesitation to try something which is not natural or the normal one. And second is how would you appeal to their sustainability angle? That is, there are people who are aware of sustainability and care for it. So how would you, number one, appeal to a consumer? Number two, appeal to a sustainable consumer through your specific product.
Yeah. So when it comes to appealing to consumers, it's just that how we are developing product. First of all, let me come from the company side. Then we'll able to understand the customer in a slightly easier manner. What we are trying to do is we are just trying to replicate the meat that you are already getting in the market. We are not reinventing the wheel. We are not giving you some new product or new thing. We are just giving you the same meat that you are used to, but produced in a different manner. That's the only difference. And that's the beginning point.
If I may interrupt there, when you say
Sure.
it's the same as the same meat as the normal, more conventional meat, what are the key parameters you consider to say that it's the same?
Yeah. So one of the first parameter we are going to consider is nutritional values.
Okay.
Is our cultivated meat nutritionally equivalent to the traditional meat? That will be absolute requirement.
Okay.
And second thing is, how does it taste? Does it taste different or does it taste same? It will exactly taste the same. These are what I'm saying is these are the basic minimum criteria for us to go to the market. And texture, because texture and smell, people are used to meat. Even though it's a chicken in India is very different from chicken from Japan or chicken in US or different countries have their own, even though all are chicken. So the third thing what we want to achieve is, does it the taste and texture mimic whatever you are used to?
Right.
So these are the three main things. That is nutritional value, taste, and texture. Does all of them match your current requirements?
Correct.
And that's a basic product introduction.
Right. So you were telling about how would you convince a consumer, and then the sustainable consumer. So for the consumer, you said that it's the same as the original meat, and then you please continue.
Yeah. So for convincing consumers, I think it's just like what we are seeking is we are seeking a level playing ground here. We want supermarkets to showcase two different type of products. Just like how when you go to any supermarket, you see like there are section which are like for yogurts with different type of yogurts and all. Some say, or just take an example of eggs. You can go see egg, and so many varieties of egg now. Some are like eggs from the cage-free animal. Some are from free roaming animals. Some are from factory-grown animals. So we want something like that. Let us put the product with clear label of how they are produced and let consumer choose. We will educate them about the different technologies used and let consumer choose. We don't want to push things to the consumer even if they don't like it. We just want them to make their own decision, and we give the stats and figures. Like by producing this meat, we killed 0 animals. So if that doesn't compel you as a animal lover, I don't know what else. And we have to think about different strategies. And the same thing goes with like the amount of CO2 or greenhouse gas that was saved or that was not emitted to the environment when producing this. These kind of figures should speak to themselves, because there is enough awareness. Like there are surveys done in many developing countries and developed countries. Majority of people are aware of environment impact of greenhouse gas emission, but because there is no governmental push and other alternate, so they are like they have come to a conclusion that individuals cannot do anything. Yes, up to some extent, individual, like just by changing your plastic bag doesn't mean you can change the whole ecosystem, but it's a good start. So we want people to start thinking about the meat options and choosing the best option, what they believe in the best. Yeah.
So how automobile industry move towards electric vehicles. So alternate protein is not a question of if, but a question of when.
Absolutely. It's just a matter of time when we give the option. And like electric cars, first thing, for example, Tesla, the first thing they made is like they didn't really make like a very different looking car. They just made a car exactly like we are all used to, but instead of engine, there is no engine here, and there is no fuel consumption or anything. It's just battery electric car. And once they give the exact same product and they show the numbers, like what's the difference between using a into combustion engines versus electric engine, people automatically make choices. Now it's just a matter of if we can bring down the price of cars, people are going to choose electric cars. Something like that. In even our case, we are going to follow the same trajectory.
Wonderful. Wish you the best for that. And just before we wrap up, I have a couple of questions. Let's say, I mean, we are talking about Sustainability Week, right? So, want to ask you if you could give some tips for our audience, which they could implement in their daily life in order to be more sustainable, more to have positive impact on the planet.
Yeah. So, irrespective of any food you're eating, just look at, just do a little bit of research on what is the impact of the food that you're consuming. How is it impacting your environment or your surrounding? And also look in the packaging, because even though there is a huge push for recycling, 70% of recycled material doesn't go into recycle. So communities which can take up some tasks absolutely helps. And having a little bit of education on the labels of the food will help you. And eventually, of course, if you can reduce the consumption of any meat, that's absolutely great, even though it's counterintuitive for our businesses. But for the greater good of the environment, if you can reduce meat consumption, that will be absolutely helpful for the whole earth. For human beings, actually, earth will be happy even whether we destroy it or not. Earth is earth. But for the sustenance of the human beings, please consider changing your meat eating habit a little bit.
Great, thank you. And one final question. What are the 3 sustainable initiative organizations or companies that you admire? If you could just name any 3, or it could be an organization or an initiative.
Of course, when it comes to a commercial organization, I love what Tesla has done to the whole electric car industry. We want some people like that and companies like that to focus on and push the envelope for the newer technology and sustainable technologies. In that regard, I absolutely love Teslas. But unfortunately, Teslas are only available currently, or people have heard of it only in developed countries. So that's where my second point goes into is UN. United Nations, there are multiple ways you can contribute. You can be a volunteer, you can be you can donate to UN. They have a wide-reaching and wide spread out programs, which is actually helping make things in a very realistic manner across the world. So a simple example is malaria is one of the deadly diseases, and it's very prevalent in many developing countries and underdeveloped countries. So a simple mosquito net reduced the malarial infection in some countries by almost 60 to 70%, just by having one simple. It's not a rocket science or anything, but we need common sense science and common sense laws, which will help make significant impact. In that regard, I definitely admire what's been done in UN. I think third thing is, I think there are many educational institutions which are like at least in Singapore, there is already a course in universities for alternate food space. So these kind of universities and education programs is absolutely important because when this technology becomes a full-fledged idea, it's the current students in the schools and colleges, they are the main consumers. And if they are aware of this kind of programs and technology, it will be much more easy for us to transition to a more sustainable meat consumption society, rather than educating everyone at one shot. Because it's something like Facebook. Facebook initially started used by teenagers, and then like their brothers and sisters started using it, then their parents started using it, then every grandpa and grandma, everyone uses Facebook. So something like that. Once we educate a younger population, and they are the drivers of our future technology, and that's what we want to push for. And we admire certain educational institutions who are really like changing or pushing newer courses, which are going to be the future technology.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So I think most of your early adopters are also people who are conscious about sustainability and also part of Impact Consulting Bangalore. Bulk of our audience being people who are management consultant aspirants or just freshly minted, undergrads and postgrads. So they
Yeah.
would definitely take this message. And thank you once again, Dr. Vinayaka, for coming and speaking on this topic. And by the way, some of you might know that, very few of you might know that Vinayak and I were flatmates in Singapore when I was in Singapore as well. So, and definitely we always converse in Canada, and Impact Consulting Bangalore being with a primary focus in Bangalore, and of course to make an impact throughout the world, of course. Do you have any message in Kannada? ಕನ್ನಡಿಗರಿಗೆ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದವರಿಗೆ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನವರಿಗೆ ಇಂಪ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಕನ್ಸಲ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಬ್ಯಾಂಗ್ಳೂರ್ ಮೂಲಕ ಒಂದು ಸಂದೇಶ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ವಿನಾಯಕ್ ಅವರೇ ಏನ್ ಕೊಡ್ತೀರಾ?
ಒಂದೇ ಹೇಳೋದಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಓದ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. ನೀವು ಏನ್ ತಿಂತಾ ಇದೀವಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಎನ್ವೈರನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ನಾವು ನಮ್ದು ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟಿಯಿಂದ ಎನ್ವೈರನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಡ್ಯಾಮೇಜ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ, ಸ್ಮಾಲ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟೋ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಇಂಪ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಅದರಿಂದ ಹೇಳೋದು, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನಮ್ದು ಏನೇ ಡೈಲಿ ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟಿ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ, ಲೈಕ್ ನಾವು ಕಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಕಾರಲ್ಲಿ, ಕಾರ್ನ 2-3 ಜನ ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಯು ಆರ್ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಲೈಕ್ ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ 3-4% ಅಲ್ಲ 3-4 ಟೈಮ್ ಇಂಪ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. 3 ಕಾರ್ ಹೋಗೋಕ್ಕಿಂತ 1 ಕಾರ್ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಪೊಲ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಈ ತರ ಸ್ಮಾಲ್ ಆಕ್ಷನ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಅನುಕೂಲ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಅಂಡ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ದ ಫುಡ್ ಹ್ಯಾಬಿಟ್ಸ್, ಇಂಡಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ಲಿ ವೆಜಿಟೇರಿಯನ್ಸ್, ದಟ್ಸ್ ಅಡ್ವಾಂಟೇಜಸ್. ಬಟ್ ಈವನ್ ನಾವು ವೆಜಿಟೇರಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ವಿ ಕಾಂಟ್ ಬಿ ಕ್ಲೋಸಿಂಗ್ ಅವರ್ ಐಸ್. ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಫುಡ್ ಆಪ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಬಿ ಮೋರ್ ಕೇರ್ಫುಲ್. ನಮ್ಗೆ ಯಾವ ತರ ಊಟ ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ, ಯಾವ ತರ ಊಟ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಎನ್ವೈರನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕೂಡ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಆರೋಗ್ಯ ಕೂಡ. ಸೊ ಇದೆರಡರ ಮೇಲೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಗಮನ ಕೊಟ್ರೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ನಾವು. ಅಂಡ್ ಒಬ್ಬೊಬ್ರು ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಸೈಡ್ಗೆ ಇಟ್ಬಿಡಿ. ನೀವು ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ ಪಕ್ಕ 5 ಜನ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗ್ತಾರೆ, 5 ಜನದಿಂದ 25 ಜನ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಈ ತರ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಇರೋದು, ಒಂಥರ ರಿಪಲ್ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಸ್ಟ್ರಾಂಗ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಬಿ ದ ಅಂಬಾಸಿಡರ್ ಫಾರ್ ಯುವರ್ ಓನ್ ಗುಡ್ಸ್.
ಹನಿ ಗೂಡಿದ್ರೆ ಹಳ್ಳ ಅನ್ನೋ ತರ. ಹಾಗೆ ಇಂಪ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಕನ್ಸಲ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಬ್ಯಾಂಗ್ಳೂರ್ ಒಂದ್ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗೆ ನಿಮ್ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ಏನ್ ಸಂದೇಶ ನಮ್ಗೆ, ನಮ್ಮ ತಂಡಕ್ಕೆ?
ಸೊ ನನಗೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಅನುಕೂಲ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಸ್ಮಾಲ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ಅಪ್ಸ್ ಗಳಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಅಷ್ಟು ದುಡ್ಡಿರಲ್ಲ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಎಲ್ಲದು ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ. ಸೊ ಇಂಪ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಕನ್ಸಲ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಅನ್ನೋದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಅನುಕೂಲ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, ನಮ್ಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಐಡಿಯಾನ ಫೋಕಸ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಹೆಂಗೆ ಅಂತ ಇಂಪ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಕನ್ಸಲ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಟ್ಟು ನಮ್ಗೆ. ಅಂಡ್ ಇದು ಏನ್ ಸಣ್ಣ ಮಾತಲ್ಲ, ಇದು ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತಾ ಏನ್ ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ದೊಡ್ಡ ವಿಷಯ ಏನಂತ. ಆಕ್ಚುಲ್ ಆಗಿ ಇಂಪ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಕನ್ಸಲ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಅವರ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಟೀಮು ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಟ್ರಬಲ್ ಏನ್ ಕಷ್ಟ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ದೇ ವಿಲ್ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಯು ಒಂಥರ ನ್ಯಾರೋ ಡೌನ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಸುಲಭ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಇದನ್ನ ಡೆಫಿನೆಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಕಾಂಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಇಂಪ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಕನ್ಸಲ್ಟಿಂಗ್. ನನಗೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಅನುಕೂಲ ಆಗಿದೆ ಇಂಪ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಕನ್ಸಲ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಇಂದ. ಐ ಎನ್ಕರೇಜ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಟು ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಗೋ ಇನ್ ಟು ಅಂಡ್ ಟಾಕ್ ಟು ಪೀಪಲ್. ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಇದು ತುಂಬಾ ಅನುಕೂಲ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಡೆಫಿನೆಟ್ ಆಗಿ ನಾನು ಹೇಳೋ ಪ್ರಕಾರ.
ತುಂಬಾ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ Vinayak Srinivas Rao. And thank you so much, Vinayaka, for joining us today, and hope to collaborate with you in the future for Impact Consulting Bangalore, and wish you the best for Gaia and your future ventures as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. Thanks for inviting, and thanks for having me here.
Thank you.